Have you ever refrigerated something healthy, only to wonder why it tasted off later? Could your fridge be quietly sabotaging the very foods you think you're preserving? And what if those small, innocent storage habits are slowly harming your health, especially after 60? Most of us grew up believing the refrigerator was the safest place for food. You bring groceries home, pop open the door, and without a second thought, stash your items inside, assuming the cold will keep them fresh and safe. But here's the surprising truth. Not all foods belong in the fridge. In fact, some of the everyday staples you likely refrigerate out of routine are actually better off left on the counter or stored in a cool, dry cupboard. Why? Because cold temperatures can do more than just chill food. They can alter its natural structure, reduce its nutritional value, and in some cases, even trigger subtle chemical changes that aren't great for your body. If you've been making conscious efforts to eat healthier or reduce food waste, this is something you'll definitely want to understand. Storing food improperly doesn't just affect flavor, it can quietly impact your well-being. For seniors whose digestion and nutrient absorption naturally slow down with age, these seemingly minor mistakes can gradually chip away at comfort and health. That watery taste in your tomatoes, the weirdly rubbery texture of your garlic, or those oddly sweet potatoes? The fridge might be to blame. In this video, we're diving into 8 common foods that should never be refrigerated, regardless of what the label says or how much room you've got on the shelf. Each one comes with its own reason. Some are backed by science, others by simple practicality. But all of them are worth knowing if you care about taste, safety, and getting the most nutrition out of every bite. Stick around until the end, because what you'll learn here might not only save you money, it could protect your health and completely change the way you store your food from now on. Let's get started with the first one. Tomatoes. Tomatoes are one of the most common foods people toss into the fridge without giving it a second thought. But if you've ever bitten into a cold tomato and wondered why it suddenly tasted bland and watery, you're not imagining it. The culprit is the refrigerator. Cold air interferes with the natural ripening process that gives tomatoes their sweet, rich, full-bodied flavor. Tomatoes are meant to ripen at room temperature. When you place them in the fridge, that ripening slows dramatically, or even stops altogether. That means the sugars and acids that normally develop to create that deep tomato flavor never quite form. The result? A tomato that looks perfectly fine, but tastes like it's missing something. And the damage doesn't stop at flavor. The texture also changes noticeably. Instead of being juicy and firm, the flesh becomes mealy, almost grainy, like it's been slightly overcooked. That vibrant, satisfying bite you expect when adding fresh tomato slices to a sandwich, tossing them in a salad, or serving them on the side turns dull and disappointing. It's not spoiled, but it certainly loses its charm. Behind the scenes, something else is happening too. When tomatoes are stored at temperatures below 50 degrees, the cold begins breaking down their cellular structure. This not only leads to that mushy texture, but also speeds up spoilage once you bring them back out of the fridge. Ironically, trying to preserve them by refrigerating them may actually cause them to go bad faster once they return to room temperature. Many seniors I've spoken with say they refrigerate tomatoes out of habit. It's what they've always done. No one ever questioned it, until now. But knowing better means storing smarter. Tomatoes do best in a bowl on the counter, away from direct sunlight. There, they continue to ripen, develop more flavor, and stay at their peak longer. And if you prefer your tomatoes chilled for a refreshing salad, that's no problem. Just pop them in the fridge about 30 minutes before serving. You'll get that cool, crisp bite without sacrificing their vibrant taste or soft, juicy texture. So next time you're unpacking groceries and instinctively reach for the fridge with a handful of tomatoes, pause. Think of all the dishes they enhance, all the color and flavor they bring to your table. Then gently place them in a bowl where they belong. Your taste buds will thank you, and honestly, so will your health. Number 2. Bananas. This is one fruit that causes a lot of confusion when it comes to storage. You pick up a fresh bunch at the store, bring it home, and think, I'd better make these last. So naturally, you put them in the fridge, thinking you're doing the right thing. But in reality, refrigeration is the quickest way to ruin their natural ripening process. Bananas thrive in warm conditions. When you put them in the fridge, that natural ripening halts completely. And here's the catch. It doesn't start again once the banana gets cold. So, if you placed an unripe banana into the fridge, don't expect it to ripen later. Instead, it stays firm, chalky, and oddly tasteless. That creamy texture you were hoping for? It just never develops. Then there's the telltale sign, the peel. You might have noticed it turning brown or almost black after just a day or two in the fridge. At first glance, it looks spoiled. But when you peel it open, you find a banana that's still pale and stiff on the inside. This visual mismatch can be confusing. The outside screams overripe, but the inside is underwhelming and unripe. That's the cold disrupting both the look and the inner transformation of the fruit. This matters even more for older adults who rely on bananas for their fiber, potassium, and digestive benefits. Improper storage not only makes bananas less enjoyable to eat, it reduces their nutritional value. That slow, natural ripening process is what converts starch into simple sugars, making bananas not just tastier, but also easier on the stomach and better for quick energy. You may also notice something else: the smell. Refrigerated bananas lose that familiar sweet scent, and when the aroma fades, so does part of the pleasure of eating one. If you've ever tried using a refrigerated banana for baking, like in banana bread, you've probably noticed they don't mash the same way. They can turn watery, stringy, or strangely rubbery, with a dull flavor that lacks that rich, sweet note you expect. So what's the better option? Keep bananas on your kitchen counter, away from direct sunlight. If you want to speed up ripening, place them in a paper bag. If they're ripening too quickly, try separating them from the bunch. And only after they've ripened fully, when they're soft and sweet, should you think about freezing them for smoothies or baking later on. By giving bananas the right environment, you preserve both their flavor and their health benefits. And isn't that what we all want from our food? Or baking? Bananas, when stored properly, are among the easiest and most affordable fruits to enjoy every single day. But once they've spent time in the refrigerator, they lose nearly everything that makes them nutritious and satisfying. Their flavor dulls, their texture becomes unappealing, and their aroma fades away. So, do yourself a favor. Give your bananas a little space on the counter. Let them sit in the open air and ripen naturally. Allow them to become what they were meant to be: soft, sweet, and full of life. If you're still with us and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 2 down below so I know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and tap that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of the videos we'd create to help inform, support, and inspire your healthy lifestyle. Now let's keep going. Number 3, potatoes. Potatoes might seem like one of the hardiest foods in your kitchen. They sit comfortably in a basket or pantry for weeks, looking firm and reliable. They feel solid, dependable, like they could handle anything. But here's what many people don't realize. Putting your potatoes in the refrigerator can quietly change them in ways you won't like. When potatoes are exposed to cold temperatures, the starch inside begins to convert into sugar far more quickly than it should. At first, this might not seem like a big deal, but it changes everything. Suddenly, your once neutral, savory potato tastes oddly sweet, and not in a good way. That unexpected sweetness can throw off your favorite recipes, especially if you're making mashed potatoes, roasted wedges, or fries where balance and flavor really matter. And there's a more serious concern too. When these sugar-loaded potatoes are cooked at high temperatures, like in frying or roasting, it can cause the formation of acrylamide. That's a chemical that forms when sugars and amino acids react to heat, and studies have linked high levels of acrylamide to potential health risks. For older adults already watching things like blood sugar, digestion, or heart health, this is definitely something to be aware of. Texture is another victim. The cold can weaken the cell walls inside the potato, leading to a watery or gritty bite. You might not notice anything unusual from the outside, but when you cook them, things feel off. They may brown too fast without softening properly. They might cook unevenly. What used to be a soft, fluffy, dependable potato now feels inconsistent and disappointing. Many people toss potatoes into the fridge, thinking they're preserving them longer. But in truth, you're not extending their shelf life. You're quietly trading away quality and potentially compromising your health. Many people store their potatoes in the fridge simply to prevent them from sprouting. It seems logical, right? Cold slows things down. But here's the twist. Refrigeration doesn't actually stop potatoes from sprouting. In some cases, it can even speed up the process, especially if the moisture levels inside your fridge fluctuate. So not only are you altering the taste and texture, but you may still end up with those little green shoots popping out of your spuds anyway. So what works better? A cool, dark, dry place, like a pantry shelf, a basement corner, or even a simple paper bag tucked in a kitchen cabinet. Airflow is just as important. Avoid sealing potatoes inside plastic bags, which trap moisture and encourage decay. And definitely don't store them near onions. Onions release natural gases that accelerate spoilage in potatoes, like two bad roommates that bring out the worst in each other. You may have been refrigerating potatoes for years without questioning it. Maybe it was just habit, or maybe you thought it would keep them fresh longer. But if you've ever wondered why your mashed potatoes tasted off, or your roasted wedges cooked unevenly, this might be the quiet culprit. The truth is, room temperature, somewhere between cool and moderate, is the sweet spot for storing potatoes. That's how you preserve not just their structure, but also their flavor and nutritional value. When cooked right, potatoes are comfort food at its best. Warm, filling, and incredibly satisfying. But the fridge? It robs them of that magic. Give your potatoes the space and conditions they need, and they'll reward you with tastier, healthier meals every time. Now, let's move on to number 4. Garlic. Garlic is a powerhouse in the kitchen. It brings a deep, rich, slightly spicy aroma to almost any dish, whether it's sautéed for a quick pasta or roasted whole until buttery soft. Its smell alone can fill your home with warmth and anticipation. But if you've been storing garlic in the refrigerator, there's a good chance you've been ruining it without even knowing. Garlic doesn't like cold and damp. In the fridge, it starts to go wrong in subtle but frustrating ways. The cloves turn rubbery and lose that satisfying snap when crushed. The outer skins begin to peel prematurely, coming off in odd, flaky layers. And soon, those little green shoots appear from the center of each clove, sprouting that signals the garlic has been stressed. What's more, sprouted garlic tastes sharp, bitter, and overpowering. It can throw off the delicate flavor balance of your dishes, especially if you're using it raw or barely cooked. And the damage doesn't stop there. Garlic stored in the fridge is more prone to mold, especially when moisture gets trapped between its papery layers. The mold might stay hidden until it's too late. By the time you see it, several cloves are likely already affected inside the bulb. Garlic needs air and dryness. It thrives in a well-ventilated spot, like a basket on your counter, or tucked into a mesh bag in your pantry, somewhere out of direct sunlight, but not sealed away. That way, it stays firm, flavorful, and ready to enhance your next meal. Let's give garlic the respect it deserves, and let it shine the way it was meant to. The key to keeping garlic fresh isn't hiding it away in a fridge drawer or tucking it onto a cold shelf. It's about creating the right environment, dry, well-ventilated, and away from moisture. When stored properly, garlic stays firm, its skins remain intact, and it can stay usable for weeks, even months, without the need for refrigeration. There's also a deeper reason many people, especially older adults, instinctively put garlic in the fridge. For those who lived through times when wasting food was not an option, the refrigerator became a kind of security blanket, a way to make everything last just a little longer. But garlic doesn't need that kind of protection. In fact, putting it in the fridge might be doing the exact opposite of what you intended. Rather than preserving it, the cold can accelerate its decline. And if you're someone who cooks less frequently than you used to, maybe just a couple of meals a week, it's even more important to store garlic correctly. When that rare craving for a home-cooked dish strikes, you want your garlic to be ready. Not rubbery, not sour, not sprouting, or on its way to the compost bin. Garlic brings depth and richness to your food. It deserves a little respect. When you store garlic the right way, you're doing more than preserving a bulb. You're preserving its integrity, its flavor, and all the potential it holds for the meals ahead. Treating your ingredients with care is part of treating yourself with care too. If you're still here watching and finding this video helpful, leave a comment with number 4 below to let me know you're following along. And if you haven't yet subscribed, I highly recommend clicking that button and turning on the bell so you don't miss any future videos. Your support allows us to continue bringing you content that informs and inspires. Let's move forward to number 5. Onions. If you've ever pulled an onion from the refrigerator and found it oddly damp, with soggy layers on the outside, or a stronger than usual smell even before slicing, it's not just you. Onions are often misunderstood when it comes to storage, and putting them in the fridge is one of the most common mistakes. It's easy to see why people do it, especially older adults trying to make groceries last longer. But here's the problem. Onions and cold, moist environments don't mix. The refrigerator disrupts the delicate balance that keeps an onion fresh and crisp. In a cold space, onions act like little sponges. They absorb moisture from the air, which then gets trapped beneath their thin, papery skin. That trapped moisture leads to soft spots, mold growth, and a fast breakdown of the onion's internal structure. Instead of staying firm and flavorful, the onion becomes mushy. And its taste? It shifts from that sharp, clean zing to something overpowering and even unpleasant, too pungent for raw dishes and too unpredictable for cooking. And that's not the only issue. Because onions have such a strong natural scent, storing them in your fridge can cause their smell to seep into other foods, even if they're wrapped up. Suddenly, your butter, your berries, or your baked goods all carry a hint of onion. Not exactly what you planned. Have you ever opened your fridge and suddenly realized everything, your butter, your berries, even your leftovers, smells vaguely of onion? That's not just in your head. Onions naturally release sulfur compounds that drift through the air, latching onto anything nearby. And although your refrigerator is cold, it's definitely not airtight. These strong aromas can silently infiltrate other foods, leaving behind a lingering scent and flavor you never asked for. But that's not the only issue. There's another quiet consequence many people miss. When you store whole onions in the refrigerator, they often start to sprout sooner than expected. That cold, damp environment sends mixed signals to the onion bulb, prompting premature green shoots to emerge. And while sprouted onions aren't necessarily harmful, they're far from ideal. Their flavor shifts into something sharper and more aggressive, while the once firm layers start to loosen and break apart. What should be a clean slice for your stir-fry or sandwich quickly turns into a rubbery, slippery mess. So what's the better option? Whole, uncut onions thrive in a dry, well-ventilated spot, like a mesh bag, basket, or open bowl placed in a pantry or cupboard. They need air circulation to stay dry and fresh, and they prefer cool, not cold, conditions that won't disturb their natural chemistry. This small shift in storage makes a big difference. Now, sliced or chopped onions are the exception. Once cut, they should be sealed tightly in a container or plastic wrap and stored in the fridge, but only for a few days. The whole ones, though, should be kept well away from those chilly, damp fridge shelves. If you find yourself cooking less often these days, it might seem safer to keep onions cold, just in case. But here's the truth. You'll get more flavor, better texture, and longer life out of your onions when you store them the way nature intended. When your onions are firm, dry, and packed with real taste, every dish benefits. It's a quiet reminder that even something as basic as an onion, when treated right, can elevate your meals in ways you didn't expect. Number 6, bread. Bread might seem like one of those foods that naturally belongs in the refrigerator, especially if you want it to last longer. After all, once it's on the counter for a few days, it starts to go stale. So putting it in the fridge seems logical, right? Surprisingly, that logic doesn't hold up. In fact, refrigerating bread actually makes it go stale faster, not slower. Why? It all comes down to a scientific process called retrogradation. When bread is stored in cold temperatures, the starches inside begin to recrystallize and reorganize. This process forces moisture out of the bread's soft interior and back into its structure, leaving the loaf feeling dry and stiff. The crust hardens too quickly, and that once soft, fluffy texture, it's gone. The structure of the bread changes drastically, turning what was once a soft, fresh loaf into something dry, stiff, and nearly lifeless, often in just one night. You might open the fridge the next morning expecting a fluffy slice for toast or a sandwich, only to find it's hard, flavorless, and more like cardboard than bread. For many seniors, especially those who grew up in times when wasting food was unthinkable, the habit of refrigerating bread feels natural and even responsible. But in this particular case, that good intention quietly backfires. Refrigeration doesn't protect the bread, it actually ruins it. And when something doesn't taste right or feels unpleasant to chew, you're less likely to eat it at all. Worse, it may still end up in the trash. There's also the texture to consider. Once refrigerated, bread loses the soft chewiness that makes it enjoyable and easy to eat. This is especially important for older adults who may deal with dry mouth, sensitive teeth, or dentures. Stale bread becomes tougher to bite through, rougher on the tongue, and even gummy when toasted. What could have been a simple, comforting bite quickly becomes a frustrating mouthful. So what should you do instead? If you've brought home fresh bread and plan to eat it within a few days, keep it at room temperature. Store it in a bread box, a cloth bag, or even a loosely folded paper bag. These allow for gentle airflow, helping the crust stay crisp without letting the loaf dry out too fast. But if you know you won't finish the loaf in time, the better option is freezing, not refrigerating it. That's right. Freezing bread is hands down the best way to preserve its freshness without damaging its structure. Just slice the loaf first so you can grab only what you need. You can pop it straight into the toaster from frozen, and it'll taste just as good as the day it was baked. Sometimes even better. Bread is one of life's simplest pleasures. It brings back memories, adds comfort to meals, and ties us to feelings of warmth and home. But when it's stored the wrong way, all of that can disappear. By breaking the habit of refrigerating your bread, you don't just keep it fresher, you preserve the little joys it brings to your table every day. If you're still with us and found this tip helpful, go ahead and comment number 6 below so I know you're watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to do so. Just hit that bell so you never miss a helpful video. Your support helps us keep creating content that informs, inspires, and makes your daily life just a little easier. Number 7, honey. Honey is truly one of nature's most extraordinary gifts. It doesn't spoil, it's packed with natural antibacterial properties, and when stored correctly, it can sit quietly on a shelf for years without going bad. That's part of what makes it so magical. But the moment you place honey inside the refrigerator, everything begins to shift, and not in a way you'd want. Cold air causes honey to crystallize. What was once a smooth golden drizzle suddenly turns thick, grainy, and cloudy. Over time, it can harden so much that it's nearly impossible to scoop or spread. Instead of flowing freely over toast or into your tea, it sticks stubbornly to the jar, leaving you frustrated and unsure if it's even still good. And here's the problem. Many people assume crystallized honey has spoiled, so they toss it in the trash, unaware that it's still perfectly safe and edible. But the real issue lies in the storage. Refrigeration creates this problem in the first place. The reason is surprisingly simple. Honey contains natural sugars that are incredibly sensitive to changes in temperature. When chilled, those sugars begin to separate from the small amount of moisture within the honey, forming tiny crystals. The result is a clumpy, coarse texture instead of the velvety consistency we expect. You open the jar, ready for a spoonful of liquid gold, and instead get something that looks more like sugar paste. Now, if your honey has already crystallized, don't worry, it's not ruined. You can restore it by gently warming the jar in a bowl of warm water. But be careful. Using the microwave or exposing it to high heat can damage both the flavor and nutritional value. Many older adults refrigerate honey out of habit, thinking they're helping it last longer. After all, we're taught that cold preserves everything. But honey is different. It doesn't need us to protect it. Its low moisture content and high sugar concentration naturally prevent bacterial growth. That's why archaeologists have even discovered jars of honey in ancient tombs that were still perfectly edible after thousands of years. Incredible, isn't it? So what does honey really need? Just the right environment. Room temperature is ideal. A pantry shelf, a kitchen cabinet away from direct heat or sunlight, or even a quiet corner on the counter will do. As long as the jar is sealed tightly, honey will remain safe, delicious, and ready to use for years. There's also something deeply comforting about honey in its natural form. The way it pours slowly from a spoon, its warm amber glow, and that gentle sweetness it brings to your tea or toast. Those small details are part of what makes it so special. It's more than just a sweetener, it's a little reminder of warmth, care, and tradition in every bite. Cold, crystallized honey loses much of the magic that makes it special. Its once smooth texture becomes gritty, the rich flow turns stiff, and over time, you might even stop using it altogether. Not because it went bad, but because it simply stopped being enjoyable. So the next time you reach for your honey jar, take a moment to check where you've been keeping it. If it's tucked away in the fridge, it's time to rescue it. Bring it back to room temperature and let it return to the natural state that gives honey its charm. When stored properly, honey doesn't just sweeten your food, it adds warmth, richness, and a touch of natural luxury to your everyday life. Number 8. Coffee. If you've been storing your coffee in the refrigerator to help it stay fresh, you're not alone. It's a common habit. Many people assume that, like dairy or produce, coffee must benefit from cold storage. After all, coffee is aromatic and flavorful, so wouldn't the fridge help preserve that? The answer, unfortunately, is no. In fact, storing coffee in the refrigerator does more harm than good. Here's why. Refrigerators are damp environments, and coffee, especially ground coffee, is extremely absorbent. It draws in moisture from the surrounding air, which can cause clumping, degrade the flavor, and even lead to spoilage over time. If you've ever noticed your coffee grounds sticking together or carrying a faintly stale or musty smell, chances are they've been sitting in the fridge too long. And then there's the issue of odor. Coffee is great at absorbing smells, which is fantastic when it's brewing on your counter, but terrible when it's surrounded by leftovers. Each time you open the refrigerator door, aromas shift and circulate. Garlic, onions, last night's fish dinner. These odors don't stay contained. They can cling to your coffee beans and grounds, subtly but steadily, ruining the flavor before you even brew your next cup. For seniors who find comfort in a daily coffee routine, maybe a peaceful morning moment or a warm conversation with a friend, these small changes can quietly take the joy out of something so simple. That once rich cup starts tasting flat. The aroma isn't quite right. The pleasure fades without a clear reason, but the culprit may be right there in the cold. So what's the better way? Store your coffee in an airtight container at room temperature, away from heat, light, and humidity. A pantry or cupboard works perfectly. If you buy in bulk, divide it up. Keep a smaller portion for daily use, and store the rest in a sealed bag or canister in a cool, dark place. This helps preserve the oils and flavors that make coffee such a beloved ritual. Even the smallest change in how you store your food can have a ripple effect on your daily life. And with something as personal and comforting as coffee, getting it right is worth it. Set aside a little space and store just a small portion of coffee in a container you'll use within a few days. If you're buying whole beans, grind only what you need for a fresh batch. And if you do prefer to grind ahead of time, keep it in small amounts, just enough to avoid letting it sit long enough to lose its freshness. It's easy to forget that coffee is a food, one that's sensitive, full of delicate oils and nuanced flavors that shift quickly depending on how it's stored. But once you start treating it properly, the difference is unmistakable. Your morning cup will greet you with a deeper aroma, a bolder taste, and that comforting warmth you used to look forward to. Coffee isn't just a beverage, it's a ritual. And when you stop storing it in the fridge, you're not just preserving flavor, you're honoring the experience. Now let's take a step back and think for a moment. As we wrap up this video, consider your own kitchen. How many of these common foods are sitting inside your refrigerator right now, slowly losing their flavor, changing in texture, or even diminishing in nutritional value without you noticing? It's easy to overlook. Most of us were raised to believe that the fridge is the safest place for anything perishable, the automatic answer for food storage. But that's not always true. Not everything spoils because of heat. As we've seen, some foods actually suffer when exposed to cold. And understanding that becomes even more important as we age. Our sense of taste evolves, digestion slows down, and the way our bodies respond to food starts to shift in subtle ways. That's why knowing which foods thrive on the counter, in the pantry, or tucked away in a cool, dry cabinet, rather than in the refrigerator, can make a real difference. You're not just saving flavor. You're protecting your health, preserving your comfort, and bringing back the simple joy of eating well. Small choices, like keeping tomatoes out of the fridge or storing honey in a cabinet, might seem insignificant, but those little adjustments can bring back the richness, the texture, and the nourishment that food is meant to give us. So what surprised you the most? Were you tossing bananas into the fridge without a second thought? Keeping garlic chilled, thinking it was safer that way? Or maybe you've been quietly wondering why your bread turns dry and lifeless so quickly. Whatever it was, just know, it's never too late to start making small shifts that lead to better living. Because in the end, that's what this is all about. Living better, not harder. Embracing thoughtful habits, staying curious, choosing what supports us at 60, 70, 80, and beyond. We're never done learning, and every change, no matter how small, can lead to greater well-being. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learn it and how you plan to apply it in your life. Your voice matters, and we read every single comment with gratitude. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you care about. Your support helps us continue creating content that informs, empowers, and inspires. Wishing you health, happiness, and peace always, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more helpful videos.